As Delta hopefully peaks, anti-mandate legislation stalls. Joining us on Columbus on the Record this week, Laura Bischoff, reporter for the USA Today Ohio Bureau, Herb Asher, OSU political scientist, and Gene Krebs, author and former state legislator. The latest news on the spread of COVID is still not good, but at least it's not getting any worse. It appears the spread of the Delta variant has peaked. The 3-week daily average of new cases remains at about 6,500. That's close to where it was 3 weeks ago. But if you look at the 2-week average of daily cases, they're down about 17%. As cases rise, though, hospitals are still filling up.
From 1 year ago to today, even though about half of us are well protected by vaccination, our daily hospitalizations are more than triple what they were averaging this time last year. And the reason is simple. The Delta variant is aggressively seeking out anyone who lacks immunity and is making them very sick.
So we're not out of the woods yet, Laura Bischoff, but are health officials starting to get more optimistic that we could be on the downside of this latest surge?
Well, if you look at reports across the nation, the number of cases, new cases, has been kind of on the downslope for the last couple of weeks as the country kind of moves past this summer surge. And the decline has been particularly pronounced in southern states, which had really high spikes. I think nationally about 77.2% of adults have received at least one shot of the vaccination. But in Ohio, the rate is only 65.5% of adults have received one shot so far.
Yeah, overall, the state, if you look at the whole population, we're at about 50% vaccinated. That's what Dr. Vanderhoff was saying, that even though half of us are vaccinated, that the hospitals are still filled with unvaccinated people. Herb Asher, is there a risk that you keep hearing that things are getting better, that people will lower their guard?
There's always that risk. But remember, people are also talking about when it gets cold up north and more people are indoors, there may be a winter surge up north. So, we're not out of the woods yet. And we still need many more people to be vaccinated. And we're still going through some of the political silliness about, which you'll talk about preventing mask mandates, vaccine mandates, and things like that. And yet it's very clear that, the best thing we could do right now is to have more appropriate vaccine mandates and mask mandates. But that's become a very political issue. It has been a very political issue.
Gene Krebs, you're out in far western Ohio. They have among the lower vaccination rates, and right now they have among the higher per capita new case rates in the state. What's the situation out there?
It's just plain grim. I've tried to explain to folks via social media the complications you can get from coming down with COVID, but telling people what to do is often like pouring water on a rock. It looks wet and nothing soaks in. What I'm left with having to do next here is I've been talking to some economic development folks, and what they're telling me is that now one of their signals they're looking for as to when they want to move, open up factories into a community or move facilities into a community is their vaccination rate. Because what they're viewing at is that the ability of that population then to take kindly to training and scientific advocacy as to how they're going to do their job, because most of the jobs are highly technical now.
Yeah, I mean, it's the economic argument, Herb, that's been from the beginning. Get vaccinated, get the economy back on track, but that really hasn't worked with large portions of society. Why do you think that is? Why do you think that economic motivation hasn't had the impact that I think a lot of us thought it might have early on?
You asked the question, why do people refuse to be vaccinated? And there are a lot of reasons going on here, but in some ways, this whole vaccination thing has been weaponized as a political/ideological battle. And so you really get into the situation right now where for certain people, you can't get past the, whether it's the ideological or the partisan blinders, or they're relying upon information that comes from very, very unreliable sources. And so there's a whole variety of reasons, but it is so frustrating. I thought the governor of Alabama a month ago, a very conservative Republican, Governor Ivey, she spoke to her fellow residents and said, now you all, our problem is not with the vaccinated, it's with the unvaccinated. So now you all have to do your duty and get vaccinated so we can have it. And it was such a lovely way to say it. So many of us are getting so impatient with people that, you want to sort of yell at them, but that doesn't work.
Yeah.
The appeal to patriotism. This is a form of getting vaccinated is a way of serving your community, serving your neighbor, serving your country. And if you have legitimate reasons, religious reasons not to get vaccinated, so be it. But for most people, there's no legitimate reason except you don't want to for whatever illegitimate reason.
Some of those reasons for not getting vaccinated came up at the State House this week. Perhaps the politics of COVID have peaked. We can only hope. At the State House, Republicans in the House thought they had a plan for a bill that would severely restrict businesses and schools from imposing vaccine mandates. But the measure stalled. The bill would not have banned vaccine mandates, but it would have allowed for some pretty wide exemptions. Those exemptions included medical reasons, religious reasons, demonstrating natural immunity to COVID because you've had it, and reasons of conscience. Supporters of the bill hoped it would be a compromise acceptable to mandate opponents and to businesses who support employee mandates. But as quickly as the bill appeared, it disappeared without a vote. Laura Bischoff, it seems like the House leadership tried to make everybody happy with this bill, but made nobody happy. Is that what happened?
Well, there's still a lot of business entities that are 100% opposed to this. They don't like the restrictions on employers. Steve Stivers, former congressman who's now the head of the Ohio Chamber of Commerce, said that it infringes on the rights of Ohio's employers. One-size-fits-all government mandates limiting employer rights are not the right approach. It's imperative that we let our businesses manage their workplaces free from government interference. So they are, the business community is not backing down on this. It does seem that, I think my colleague Titus Wu did kind of a roundup of all the different vaccine and mask related bills that are pending. There's scores of them. And I do think that eventually they'll come to some agreement that will not make the business community happy, but maybe won't make the anti-vaccine mandate people happy either. There's probably some way to split the difference.
Gene Krebs, because this bill would not have banned mandates. It just would have basically made the mandates, with holes as large as you could drive a conspiracy theory laden truck through. So who do you think, which side killed this bill? Was it the business side or was it the anti-mandate side?
It was a circular firing squad. I think the problem we're having here with the GOP is that it's trying to make the transition from being a party that's been of the pro-business universe into being more of the workers' party, more of a populist party. And it's trying to jump over that chasm or straddle that chasm, and it's not working well. And I do not see in my conversations with folks on the, shall we say, the more anti-vax side, any idea of a compromise is a violation of their absolute rights on this, and they will not compromise. And anybody who attempts to compromise, they're vowing to take out in the primary.
Herb Asher, the vaccine mandates in other areas of the country seem to be working. New York State this week had a deadline that said if you work in a healthcare facility, you had to get vaccinated or you would lose your job. And suddenly there was a surge of vaccines being administered to hospital workers. So the mandates, whether they're procrastinating or just kind of like, okay, principle's one thing, but my paycheck's another. Could that happen here?
Look, leadership matters. And leadership from the business community, the political community, the civic community. And the more you have people talking about mandates as being appropriate for public health and the economy, the better off you are. In Ohio, we still got a group of members of the General Assembly, as Gene said, who are going off the deep end in the other direction and sort of giving hope to those people who are anti-mandates for masks or vaccines. And it's almost insanity by now. We know that, in fact, vaccines work, masks work, having some appropriate exceptions for people of conscience, so be it. But to still have voices out there who say, no way, no how, or whatever, that's just harmful. And I know we're going to be talking about school board elections.
Yeah.
And this will be interesting because in a number of communities where the school boards have imposed mandates, there have been some parents who have been very upset. And the parents who are upset go to school board meetings and they protest and they shout and all of that. And the media cover them. And so they get a lot of publicity. They sort of dominate the debate, if you will. But it'll be nice to have some of these issues on the ballot, because it may be the case, and I could be totally wrong about this, but there may indeed be a silent majority in many of those communities who say, of course, have a mask mandate, have a vaccine mandate. But those people aren't the ones who get all the news coverage, all the political coverage, get interviewed on various networks and all of that. So we'll see. And maybe that will help us understand if, in fact, the school members who support mandates get reelected.
Yeah, let's get to that.
That the loudest voices aren't the representative voices.
Yeah, well, let's get to that. Usually school board races feature debates over class sizes and teacher salaries and how access to advanced placement classes. Well, this year, COVID appears to be driving many newcomers to school board races. The big issue is mask mandates. Since the start of the pandemic, the vocal groups of parents have denounced those mandates on social media. Now some are actually running for office. Hilliard has a slate of 3 candidates running, largely because of their opposition to the district's mask mandate. Herb, you've already kind of laid out the scenario here, but this is an illustration of national politics affecting, school board. They don't worry about this stuff too much. It's mainly class sizes, bus routes, pizza for lunch.
Tax levies.
Yes, yeah, tax levies.
Yeah. But no, this is amazing, and I don't know whether the other candidates in Hilliard are clearly pro-mask mandates, pro-vaccine mandates, but this will be a clear choice for the voters of Hilliard. Do you want the people who are opposed to, in fact, mandates to win? Or do you want the people who, in fact, think mandates are appropriate for schools and staff and the students and all of that? And that'll be an interesting thing to look at. And my guess, again, is that there is a silent majority of common sense people in Hilliard or in the United States who would say, yeah, we really understand that we have to get this under control, and some kinds of limitations are appropriate.
But it's not a slam dunk. An Axios poll in September found that 43% of Ohioans oppose mask mandates in schools, while 40% support them. Laura Bischoff, there are a lot of folks out there who do not like these mask mandates. They tend to be in more rural areas, I'm guessing, and more conservative households, but there's a platform to run on there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that there has been kind of like a decline in voter participation in local and state elections, and there's been a heavy emphasis on federal. And this is an instance in which kind of that national federal issue about the handling of the pandemic is becoming a proxy. It's almost like playing out as a proxy in the local school board races. All these people who are signing up to run. So I'm not sure if there is that silent majority out there that would, turnout is typically kind of low in off-year elections. So we'll have to see how it's going to play out. I do think that, if 40% oppose mask mandates, 60%, conversely, you'd assume that 60% would support them, and a 60-40 win in a school board race is a wipeout.
Yeah.
So.
Gene Krebs, can I assume that there are no pro-mask mandates on school board ballots in Western Ohio?
Usually, the big controversy is people wanting to fire the football or basketball coach. That's not the topic this time.
Yeah.
I'm still waiting to see how it plays out. But I do agree with her. This is going to help clarify some of the things. We'll be able to see it. This will be a really good test. The other problem, though, with school board ballots is that you might have 3 slots. You may have 7 people running. It's a bed sheet ballot type of thing. I'm not 100% sure, though, that we're going to get all the clarity that we may want out of this because of the structure of the ballot.
Yeah, and because the power of incumbency is real, and most of the incumbents, I think, on the school board ballots, and especially in the suburban communities, supported some kind of a mask mandate to basically keep the kids in the classroom, which is the main reason why they're doing it, in addition to keeping everyone safe. Our next topic: abortion protesters returned to the State House this week. They are mainly supporters of abortion rights. Protest is planned for Saturday. They were there earlier this week as the Ohio Senate began hearings on a bill that would make abortion immediately illegal in the state if the Supreme Court overturns Roe versus Wade. That could happen as early as next spring when the court issues its decision on the Mississippi case that it hears in December. Abortion opponents in Ohio want the state to be ready. They want to pass a law that would make performing an abortion or promoting abortion immediately a crime once the court overturns Roe, if that occurs. Gene Krebs, why not just wait for the court's decision? Why do we need this so-called trigger law?
I think they're wanting the trigger law to go ahead and gain street creds in their base. I do think what you want to look at this though. All of this is a issue in transition, and that is that eventually this is going to end up, I believe, on the ballot in the states as a constitutional amendment for each individual state about Roe v. Wade, about allowing abortion or restricting abortion. And I think that is also, though, the fear, if you will, of the advocates on both sides of this. Because once you go to the ballot and you have the people actually speak on this, now you've achieved a certain amount of democratic clarity, so to speak. And they're going to try to avoid doing that. Now think about that. Nobody's actually proposed a constitutional amendment to go on the ballot in case Roe v. Wade's overturned, to put it in the Constitution. And ask yourself why.
Yeah. Laura Bischoff, I mean, we've had in Ohio pretty severe restrictions on abortion, the last one being the heartbeat law, which bans abortion after cardiac activity is detected in a fetus, usually around 6 weeks, as early as 6 weeks in a pregnancy. So that basically bans abortion, but it's on hold right now. But reading this law, this bill, it's in black and white what Ohio might look like if abortion was made illegal. Does that galvanize either side or both sides by seeing it right there in black and white?
I think it probably galvanized both sides, and it doesn't take much to galvanize on this particular topic. People are very passionate on one side or the other on it. And I do think Gene's right in that I think that there's an effort to kind of like bolster those street cred, among the base for the abortion opponents on this.
Herb Asher, might this also be sort of a preemptive move that abortion opponents want this ready to go? Because if you wait until the court rules, if they do overturn it, then it becomes, as Gene said, an issue for possibly the voters. And with 61% of Ohio voters this summer saying they support Roe versus Wade, that going to the ballot is certainly not, it's going to be a toss-up at best.
That's right. No, I think what you're really having here is people trying to position themselves, but I think the more extreme or the more anti-abortion the actions are that the legislature takes, the more likely we are going to have people trying to go the constitutional route. Look, the whole argument against Roe versus Wade was it stopped actually the debates that were going on in all 50 states. Some states were going to be pro-choice states, some states were going to be pro-life states, and Roe v. Wade stopped that, but then it started generating all of these measures on the part of the pro-life people to try to restrict Roe versus Wade. So we now have all these proposals out there, and my guess is that Gene is correct that if in fact the legislature comes up with something that is so extreme that you're going to galvanize the opponents, and the opponents will have a little bit of an opportunity if they can rein in their ambitions and say that there are legitimate restrictions on abortion, but if they can rein those in and point out how their opponents are so extreme, you may in fact have a constitutional right for an abortion under certain conditions here in Ohio.
All right, our last topic. Lawmakers this week, surprise, surprise, missed another redistricting deadline. Lawmakers had until Thursday to come up with a map that satisfied at least portions of both parties. They did not, so now the process moves to the Redistricting Commission. This panel drew up the controversial state legislative maps that heavily favor Republicans, and that map faces court challenges. Democrats offered to help this time, as they did last time, with the congressional map. They presented a congressional map that would help their candidates in upcoming congressional races. Herb Asher, what happens now? Does this commission really try to come up with a fair map, or are they just going to kick it down the road back to the legislature, which they'll get it at the end of this month?
Yeah. No, I who knows? I mean, I thought the legislature, the Republicans, the way they handled the state legislative redistricting surprised me, because clearly any fair redistricting would result in a Republican majority in the Ohio General Assembly. And they so overreached on the state legislative districts that I thought there's a certain silliness or craziness here. What are they doing? And they most, except for Matt Huffman, the other four Republicans all acknowledged this was not a very good plan, and we expect to be dealing with it again. I think, well, if you acknowledge it's not a very good plan, why did you do it? So now when we start talking about Congress, I don't know what their motivation is. In both cases, for Congress and the state legislature, a reasonable plan for Congress would result in probably a 9-6 Republican majority, maybe 8-7, but 9 wouldn't require a heck of a lot of gerrymandering. And you might sort of say, well, maybe they want to do that, but then there are pressures coming nationally for the congressional redistricting, because every seat counts.
Yeah.
People are looking to the 2022 elections. The Democratic majority in the U.S. House is only 8 seats. So if you lose a seat or two in Ohio, that could be the balance of the margin of difference or whatever. But if you look at it from a side, I'm sure Laura Jean and I could come up with a very reasonable plan and say it's fair, it's balanced, it has representational fairness and all that. But the people who are working on this, I think, there's other motivations I can't quite fathom.
Laura Bischoff, do we know what this process is going to look like? They kind of packed the last time they packed a bunch of hearings into a week, I think 10 in the period of 7 days, to gather public input. Will they do the same thing with this commission this time around with the congressional maps?
All signs kind of point that way. I think that the fact that they missed the September 30th deadline, just sort of whiffed on that. It's not a good sign for a 10-year map. And it is pretty on brand for lawmakers and public policy leaders in Ohio to cram everything into the last minute and make a decision on deadline. Having covered the legislature for the last 20 years, it's kind of a tried and true pattern.
Yeah, human nature on steroids there as far as procrastination goes. Gene Krebs, the other development this week, the Supreme Court set a date for December to hear these challenges in the state maps. And Supreme Court Justice Pat DeWine says he will not recuse himself from the case, even though his father is named as a defendant in this case. Justice DeWine says because Mike DeWine is only one of 7 people on the lawsuit, he doesn't have as much influence and he doesn't need to recuse himself. What do you think is going on there? Do you think it's legitimately that, or do you think that the Republicans worry about, making their majority on the Supreme Court that much thinner if he would recuse himself?
I think that is definitely part of it. I think this is also something that Pat DeWine needs to be very careful about, because if he missteps at all slightly, he's on a real tight rope here. Generally speaking, Bobby and Betty Buckeye, which is a trademark phrase, folks, actually, they want to see fair districts. They don't want to see this people choosing their legislator. What this reminds me of, too, is Mark Twain once said that history seldom repeats, but it often rhymes. In 1992, my first partisan election, my primary did not actually get settled until June. And it kept, I think I had like 5 different dates as to when I had to plan for my primary for.
Wow. All right, let's get to our final off-the-record parting shots. Mr. Bobby and Betty Buckeye, Gene Krebs, you're up first.
In my recent Columbus Dispatch op-ed, I referenced that there's going to be about 120 folks that are going to have their lives ruined as a result of House Bill 6. That does not include, though, everybody who's going to find themselves now hitting a glass ceiling. That because of their even peripheral involvement in House Bill 6, they're going to find it difficult for themselves to move ahead politically.
All right, Herb Asher, 30 seconds, final thought.
The Ohio Supreme Court, which is the court of original jurisdiction on appeals of state legislative redistricting, will in fact decide that the Republican adopted plan is unconstitutional. And the Republicans will, of course, then about smarted themselves. The reason they went to the Ohio Supreme Court is when they passed this amendment, when we passed the amendment, it was 7-0 Republican, it's 4-3 Republican, and the Chief Justice has repeatedly said she's unhappy with gerrymandering.
And Laura Bischoff, your final thought.
Just a reminder to viewers that Election Day is November 2nd. You can start doing your homework on all those local candidate school board races now and get your vote in. Don't forget to be nice to poll workers. They have a very long day. And then the second thing I wanted to say is if you're interested in redistricting, make sure to follow Jessie Balmert of Gannett Newspaper. She's been doing a stellar job on all the coverage.
Yes, she has. That is Columbus on the Record for this week. You can check us out online. We are on Twitter. We're on Facebook, where you can see a link to Gene Krebs' op-ed. If you go to the Columbus on the Record Facebook page, you can check out his fine op-ed. And of course, you can connect to all of that at our website, wosu.org/COTR, where you can watch each one of these episodes on demand. So for our crew and for our panel, I'm Mike Thompson. Have a great week.